Hey there, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of True North Sports Talk podcast. I am Peter Barclay, your host, and we are back with another episode of the hottest topics of the week in sports. And we're going to get deep into week 2 of the NFL season. We have some Major League Baseball stuff we're going to talk about. We have the Mariners and their playoff push. We got Jacob deGrom coming back to New York. Just sit back, relax, enjoy the show that we have for you today here. We're going to talk about major storylines and see what you guys are buzzing about. Now, you saw me just peek to my left here, and that is because the Jays are playing right now up here north of the border. That's our team. And so, we're going to take a look at that throughout the day. And so, we're going to power through. We got some big stories coming up from the world of sports. Most of it is found in the NFL. We got some baseball, like we said. We're going to talk about lots of different things, see what people are talking about. We have a Super Bowl rematch coming up with the Chiefs and the Eagles. So that's going to be something you definitely want to check out. You're definitely going to want to get the analysis ahead of time. And we don't get into sports betting a whole lot on the podcast here, but maybe, just maybe, there will be a tidbit of information that could help you make your own decision. I'm not here to tell you what to do one way or the other that way. Maybe you can find out something you need to know for your fantasy football league. And there was a new contract given out in the NFL this week by the Dallas Cowboys. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about perhaps some overreaction to week 1 in the NFL. And so there's history going on in Seattle. They're making a playoff push. They have Cal Raleigh setting records out there with home runs for catchers. And outside of the home run thing, though, he's had a pretty mediocre season at the plate. And then again, like we mentioned, we got Jacob deGrom going on. And so, let's just get right into it. Let's hop on board with the episode. And the question a lot of people are asking, and what we're going to get into with the Super Bowl rematch is, are the Chiefs going to start out 0-2 on the season? So the biggest story in the NFL this week is Monday Night Football's rematch. And again, that's your last chance to catch up on your betting line for the week, or your last chance to get even further ahead, depending on where you're at. And this isn't just any week 2 game. This could be a precursor of a game down the line called the Super Bowl. So we'll see. The Chiefs are coming off a shocking week 1 loss to the Chargers. That game took place in Brazil, so we'll see how they do now that they're going to be back on American soil, and now that they're facing the team that was across from them just 7 months ago in the Super Bowl. And so the internet is really kind of got a bit of a buzz on, and they're looking for stuff like, can the Chiefs start 0-2? Will the Eagles get their revenge in that game? And everyone understands the psychological impact of this matchup. So if the Kansas City goes down 0-2, how are they going to react to that as a team? Are they going to bounce back? Is it going to dig them a deeper hole? Who knows? But one thing we do know, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, all these guys who have been there, done that before, it's unlikely they're going to be rattled by that. Patrick Mahomes, I don't know, he's gone 0-2 as a starter ever. And so the pressure may seem like it's high on Mahomes and Andy Reid and the entire organization. And so that leaves Philadelphia riding easy, because all they got to do is come in and play the game. The Eagles are riding high after their Super Bowl, and they know the Chiefs will be desperate in order to not go down 0-2. Philadelphia has been a search with the Eagles versus Chiefs rematch. People are talking about a Super Bowl hangover. Will we see any of that from the Eagles? And Kansas City's motivation is something that they need to look at. Jalen Hurts looks sharp in week 1. The defense is healthy, and that's always a big key if you're going to repeat as champions. They have that championship confidence, and playing a wounded Chiefs team could possibly be a more dangerous thing than playing a confident one, just simply because if you've ever cornered an animal, that's when they're at their most dangerous sometimes. So desperate teams do desperate things. And then there's always that Mahomes factor. So what are people talking about when it comes to that? They're asking questions like, is this it for Mahomes? Is he starting to go on the backside of his career? Is the Chiefs dynasty over? I don't know. To me, after one game of the season, even if they go down 0-2, these are still gigantic overreactions, if you ask me. They do show, however, the fans are putting more pressure on Kansas City than ever before. Again, Mahomes has never started a season 0-2, and I don't know that he's about to try and let that happen now. So the only thing standing in his way is that old enemy in the Philadelphia Eagles. The Brazil game showed there's some rust there. There were a little bit of miscommunications on both sides of the ball, but we're talking about a quarterback who's won 3 Super Bowls and 1 bad game in a different hemisphere. That doesn't erase everything he's done to this point or everything he will do from this point on. There's a chess match going on, not even on the field, but off the field between Andy Reid and Nick Sirianni. It'll be fascinating because Reid knows this Eagles team better than anyone, being as he was their coach at one point in time, if I'm remembering correctly, even won a Super Bowl in Philadelphia. He was instrumental in the foundation that they're currently building right now. And Sirianni has something Reid never had in Philadelphia. Oh, so this answers what I wasn't quite there yet. So he didn't win that Super Bowl from a few years ago. He had left just before that. So that's the one thing Sirianni has. Now, there's adjustments from week 1 that will be crucial. How does Kansas City fix their offensive line issues? How do the Eagles attack a Chiefs defense that looked vulnerable against the Chargers? How will the Chiefs defense react to that game against the Chargers? Will they bounce back, or will they just status quo? Looking vulnerable, not making the plays. That doesn't sound like a Chiefs defense, but time will tell. This game will be the talk of the town Monday morning or Tuesday morning. All the talk shows, social media reactions, the power rankings, all those things are going to be as a result of that game. The winner gains a lot of momentum and potentially a psychological advantage. And definitely in the case of the Chiefs, but on both sides of things, whoever loses this game on Monday, they're going to face serious questions about whether they'll be able to meet again in the Super Bowl. Now, we're only at week 2, so there's a long way to go in this season, so no point in panicking just yet. The betting line, public perception, all these things will shift dramatically based on the result. And that's if you're looking at this point in the season of betting on something like the Super Bowl. So if the Chiefs lose, and quite possibly there will be a lot of panic among the Chiefs fan base, and no one's thinking, at least at this point, definitely not this reporter, thinking that the Chiefs aren't going to make the playoffs. But that just shows how NFL fans can overreact, and even still, fans in all sports in general can overreact. Kansas City's offensive line protection for Mahomes is going to be a huge key. It's going to be something we have to watch out for to make sure they can keep him healthy and on the field. Philadelphia's ability to handle the crowd noise and the primetime pressure of Monday Night Football being in Kansas City. There's going to be a special teams battle on both sides of the ball, as they both have elite special teams units. And it doesn't matter what sport you're in, if there's quarters or innings or whatever, it comes down to that last fourth quarter, ninth inning, whatever the case may be, execution, or second half if there's halves. Travis Kelce versus the Eagles secondary is going to be a matchup that's worth watching, and to see whether he can shake free and get that Mahomes-Kelce connection going on. And at this point in time, it doesn't necessarily feel like week 2 just based on the game. Might feel like a playoff game. Definitely could have implications down the line based on the playoffs and even Super Bowl. And while everyone has been focusing on the quarterback drama based on the Eagles and the Chiefs, the Dallas Cowboys have quietly made one of their players the highest paid guard in NFL history, and that player is Tyler Smith. They signed him to a 4-year, $96 million extension that averages about $24 million per year, and about 81.2 of that is guaranteed. So let's take a look at these numbers and see where they lead us. So $96 million for a guard. Now that's an offensive lineman. The guaranteed money alone is 81.2, which in the NFL, that's quite a large number. And that is more than most quarterbacks get. And quarterbacks are usually the highest paid guy on the field. This deal is massive. It reshaping how we think about offensive line value and what these players mean to the team as they do protect the quarterback. And to put this in perspective, this deal makes Smith higher paid than some of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL. This is going to change the way everyone looks at their contracts going forward, including the quarterbacks. So the Cowboys are betting that their entire offensive future on protecting Dak Prescott and creating running lanes. So why do guards matter now? Well, the NFL has evolved to interior pass rush, and that position or that way of doing things is more dangerous than ever. So an elite guard who can handle like an Aaron Donald, Chris Jones, Quinnen Williams, these guys are worth their weight in gold because they protect that running back. They protect that quarterback as they go through the middle or on their runs when they're doing a run offense. And Smith can do that. So people are looking for highest paid guards in the NFL. They're looking at Cowboys offensive line money to see where this deal fits in with the rest of his teammates. And this deal signals a market shift that we're seeing in the NFL. If Tyler Smith is really worth $24 million per year, what does that mean for Quentin Nelson, Zach Martin, and other elite guards? Does this give Dallas a championship window? It's hard to say. This extension, though, it does tell us everything that we want to know about the Cowboys' timeline, and that they believe their championship window is in the here and now and not really in the future. And that by itself has caused them to be willing to pay premium prices to keep it open. It also shows that The team is doing okay, at least financially, and able to afford that. They also have Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons. This core is going to be expensive, and adding Smith's deal makes Dallas one of the most expensive rosters in the NFL. So that brings a new kind of pressure to this team, and that pressure is to win now. The question will always be, can they do it? So the impact this has on the market, agent Drew Rosenhaus just reset the guard market completely. Every other elite guard and their representation is now going to use this deal as leverage. Because they're going to say, hey, my guy is better than that guy, pay me more, right? That's how the sports world works. And again, the NFL being a salary cap league, that has implications across the entire league, because that will be significant. Teams like the Patriots, the Colts, Rams, who have elite guards coming up for extensions soon, just saw their cost of doing business skyrocket from where it would have been, say, a month ago, a week ago, wherever you want to go. So this one deal could affect the entire NFL landscape. So what do Cowboys fans think about this? Well, as usual, this deal kind of has some that love it. They think investing in protection for Dak and just keeping that offense bolstered. Others question whether spending this much on that position when they clearly have other holes in their roster, just make it, why do that? Doesn't make any sense. On a national level, again, the reaction's been mixed. Some analysts think it's a good deal. Others, and they recognize Smith's value. Others think, wow, this is such a massive thing. This is overpaying. It created an unrealistic market of expectations. And so that's how the fan base is kind of like 50-50 on this. What does that do for Smith himself? Well, if you're making $24 million, there's a certain expectation that comes with that. And we've seen players who get this kind of a deal where it's the highest either at that position or highest in that league overall, that there's sometimes a drop-off because then the player starts trying too hard to live up to that. So Tyler Smith would be wise to just keep being him, let the game come to him, and don't try and overdo it. And so he was their best offensive lineman last year. He was a rookie. He's young. He's talented. And has a lot of room to grow. He just has to keep working on it. They're banking on the fact that he develops into a perennial Pro Bowler. And this deal will look like a bargain, possibly eventually. So the Jerry Jones effect. This deal reflects Jerry Jones's willingness to spend money on talent that he believes in. The Cowboys have never been afraid to make some big financial commitments, because for Jerry Jones, he's got that ability to do so. And this continues along that tradition. So the question is whether they can build enough around Dak Prescott, whether they can build enough around Tyler Smith and complete that roster while paying these premium prices, because eventually they're going to hit a wall with the salary cap and things like luxury taxes and all that kind of thing. And so paying this much on one particular position, that salary cap is going to give Dallas some really tough choices in the near future, say 4 years from now, 5 years from now, when these contracts start coming up as well, or even in the meantime, trying to fill out the spots around them. So let's take a look now at week 1 in the NFL. That season, that week created some predictable chaos, lots of overreactions, hot takes, and a completely reshuffling of the power rankings that fans and analysts are all buzzing about all over the internet. So what are we going to look at first? Well, let's talk about the overreaction cycle. This seems to happen every year, but somehow we all fall into it because it's a fresh slate, a fresh schedule. Everyone is going, oh yeah, this year is going to be the year. They're all optimistic. My team's made some moves. And it's just fandom failure 101, really. It's, are you able to take a very pragmatic or honest look at your team and just say, you know what? Yeah, this is a new season, but our expectations need to be managed because X, Y, and Z. So are you willing to take that hard look and admit that? Or are you gonna just be that super enthusiast that a couple of games your emotions drop if you're losing, or if you win a couple of games you get real high? Or can you just understand that, hey, it's a long season and we'll get there when we get there and see how it shakes out? Perfect example of that outside the NFL, and so this is why Kansas City needs to not overreact too much, but a team like our Blue Jays here, up here north of the border, we didn't expect a whole lot from them this year. We thought this was going to be a bit of maybe a rebuild or a middle of the pack kind of year, and for me at least, there wasn't that huge high expectations. Well, where are they now? By the grace of God and some really hard work put in by these players and things just falling in to their place at times, they have now led the division for a long period of time. So, bringing it back to the NFL now and week 1, there were some blowouts, there were some tight games. Week 1 went off very well, and people saying that the Chiefs dynasty is over, that the Chargers are Super Bowl favorites, the 49ers are washed up. It's almost beautiful in its predictability, but week 1 arrived, it upset. There were upsets that happened, and everyone seems to forget sometimes we've seen this movie before. Remember a few years ago when Tom Brady was still there, that the Patriots went 1-3 and then came back and won the Super Bowl. So again, just remember, the Rams looked terrible early in the year, the one year. They made the playoffs that same year. So yeah, let's not get too carried away. Let's not overreact too much. We've already mentioned one of the specific overreactions being that the Chiefs lost in game 1. Why does that cause you to question Patrick Mahomes? This is the same guy that's won 3 Super Bowls. He's got 5 AFC championships, which is in a baseball equivalent, like a division championship. And all that over one game? As fans, what are we doing here? Like, that's just a gross overreaction. Another one was the 49ers had some struggles, and then all of a sudden people are like, oh no, the window closed. Really? After one game? Like, that seems a bit extreme to me. This is the team that's been to 2 NFC championship games. They've been to a Super Bowl in the last 4 years. I don't think it's that drastic, guys. I really don't. And meanwhile, the teams that looked great in week 1, they're getting Super Bowl predictions all of a sudden. Just because the Chargers beat the Chiefs, what happened any given Sunday here? We don't know exactly what's going to happen until we get to the playoffs. And all of a sudden now, they're the AFC favorites over the Chiefs just on one good game. The Saints, a team no one really has expected much from since the Drew Brees era, they dominated Carolina, and all of a sudden people think they're back to that Drew Brees era. Week 1, in reality, tells us almost nothing about where this season's going to be in January when the playoffs hit and you're looking to get to the Super Bowl. So the power rankings, every major outlet pretty near completely reshuffled the power rankings after week 1. I don't know that this really matters a whole lot other than to maybe the fantasy guys. There's teams that jumped 10 spots up or down on a single game. I mean, the Chiefs dropped from number 1 to outside the top 5. Okay. The week 1 power rankings where they were going into the season, no one had played any games yet, so what does it matter, right? The Chargers jumped into the top 3. The Cowboys fell despite winning. How does that work? That doesn't make sense. So these power rankings, I wouldn't put much stock in them if I was you guys. So why do we do this? Well, we're fans, right? There's something for the fan base and their content creation that is satisfying about overreacting to 1 week. After months of off-season speculation, it's fun as fans to finally have games to analyze and things to look at. Our brains aren't wired for the small sample size. Although if you're in the sport and you actually professionally, objectively observe the sport, you might be, well, it's just a small sample size. But as fans, we just aren't wired that way. People want to draw big conclusions from limited data. And like I said, content creation, social media amplifies everything. A bad throw becomes, is he done? A great drive goes MVP candidate. And these type of shock reactions and overreactions are what the algorithm rewards. So these extreme reactions are what we're going to get. Is there any historical context to go around week 1? Well, teams that start 0-1 make the playoffs around 35% of the time. So nothing to sneeze at there. Teams that start 1-0, they miss the playoffs about 45% of the time. So that's still possible for those teams that won. Maybe the Chargers go 0-17 the rest of the way and they're 1-18 at the end of the year. And they missed the playoffs. Who knows, right? The 2007 Patriots, and I remember this, went 16-0 in the regular season, and then they lost the Super Bowl. So that doesn't always mean anything going into the playoffs. Any given Sunday, the 2011 Giants, I remember this one also, they just squeaked into the playoffs, and Eli Manning took them to the promised land. So early season performance, that doesn't predict postseason success. A little bit of rookie spotlight for your NFL early goings here. One bright spot from week 1 was, oh dear, if I butcher this name, I'm sorry, Kingsley Samacha. He had a solid debut for the Chiefs, and the rookie tackle did a very good job of protecting Mahomes despite the team's overall struggles. He was kind of a bright spot. So this is exactly the kind of performance that sometimes gets lost in the overreaction season. But it also matters for the long-term success of the team. Now, sports media has the responsibility at times to provide context or to slow the narrative of these overreactions. They have pressure to have immediate content, often wins. So the Chiefs might miss the playoffs. That gets them more attention and ratings than something like the Chiefs had one bad game in unusual circumstances. And quite frankly, the fans deserve better analysis than just simple hot takes going, oh, whoa, the sky's falling, they lost one game. And it's like, well, no, maybe it isn't, right? As fans, though, we consume those hot takes, and it's a cycle that unfortunately feeds itself. So week 2, that will create a whole new set of overreactions. And in many cases, they'll all contradict their week 1 overreactions. So teams that look dead will look alive again, Super Bowl favorites will look vulnerable, and then the cycle continues over and over. So, what is the smart approach to all of this? Well, watch the trends over multiple weeks. See where the injuries take it. Remember, 17 games plus the playoffs is a long journey. But that's not nearly as fun as declaring dynasties over after one loss. And while everyone is focused on football, baseball is still going on here as the season winds down. The Seattle Mariners are quietly making one of the most compelling playoff pushes this year in baseball. They are riding a 7-game winning streak, and that has the Pacific Northwest buzzing about October baseball. And as it stands right now, there is a bracket with them on it. And on one side, as it stands today, you have Seattle and Houston. And then on the other side, you have New York and Boston. And then at the top of that, you have the Blue Jays and the Tigers waiting for the winner of those two games. Now, depending on the wins and losses, which side the Tigers are on and all that, it depends on who comes first in the American League and who comes second. So, the Mariners seem like, at this point, they're going to have the Houston Astros in the wild card game. And if they can win that, then they would get either Toronto or Detroit in the division series. And then on the other side, it would be New York or Boston getting the winner of, or getting whoever is on that side, whether it's Detroit or Toronto, and then the winners obviously play the winners. But the Mariners are in that playoff streak. They beat the Angels and extended their streak to 7 games. And 7 games is nothing to sneeze at. And all of a sudden, they're seriously in the wild card contention. So people are looking at it. They're saying Mariners playoff chances, Seattle wild card race, Mariners October baseball. And for the city of Seattle, that would be huge for a fan base that hasn't seen playoff baseball in a couple of years since they beat the Blue Jays there a few years ago in the wild card. And so it's been a few years, and they're just looking to continue that playoff push. And so 7 games in some sports, or even in this one, may not sound like a whole lot, but in a tight playoff race, every win matters and is massive. The Mariners are, at this point in time, playing their best baseball at the perfect time. They have strong pitching going on right now, timely hitting. Their defense has been solid, and the timing is crucial because they're facing teams that they have to beat, and division rivals and wildcard competitors. Nothing at this time of year for teams even with a sniff at wildcard contention are empty wins. Even if they're against bad teams, you need every win you can get. So these are momentum building victories against meaningful opponents, and Seattle's starting pitching has been dominant during this streak, and they need that going into the playoffs if they want to go on a deep run. And when your rotation is dealing, you can win low scoring games like the 2-1 victory, and it puts less pressure on your offense, less pressure on your bullpen, and it would appear that this team is built for October style baseball where pitching and defense often wins the day. So the bullpen has been lights out to go along with that strong starting pitching. Close games are being finished professionally, which is exactly what playoff teams do. Seattle is showing that they can win in different types of games. So what are the wild card mathematics when the race is incredibly tight? Every series, every game, they all matter. Seattle's hot streak comes at the perfect time because there are other contenders and other guys who have been in that playoff spot that are now struggling a little bit or playing .500 baseball. As always, but at this point, the Mariners really do control their own destiny based on how they play. They need to maintain this level of play. 7 games is great, but they need 15 to 20 more games of similar performance to lock up a playoff spot. And what are we going to look at now? Well, Jacob deGrom had an emotional return to New York City today. And speaking of those compelling stories, his return to Citi Field, where he spent the early part of his career, was one of the most emotional moments of the week. The former Mets ace got a standing ovation from the fans who had watched him dominate for years in a New York uniform. This wasn't just a player returning to his old team. This was a franchise icon, the face of the franchise, and it was a homecoming. So deGrom Mets return, deGrom standing ovation. These type of trends show just how much this moment meant to baseball fans, specifically those in New York. deGrom had a dominant performance. The 2-time Cy Young winner dominated his former team in that game. That created some mixed emotions for Mets fans because they love seeing deGrom pitch well, but at the same time, they want to see their team win. They love deGrom the person, but they hate losing to deGrom the pitcher. And his performance reminded everyone why he's considered one of the best pitchers of his generation. When healthy, deGrom can be, at times, virtually unhittable, and his return to elite form has been one of baseball's best stories this year. So, from a national, countrywide perspective, these stories matter because they create and maintain interest in baseball now that this NFL season has kicked off. And pretty soon you're going to have NHL kicking off, you're going to have NBA kicking off. So you need stories like the Mariners playoff push, stories like deGrom returning home to keep a compelling narrative going and keep your fan base interested into October baseball. deGrom's return provides that drama and emotion that transcends team loyalties. Even non-baseball fans can appreciate the storyline of a great player returning to where he became great. There's a similar story in the NHL this preseason with Marc-Andre Fleury returning to the Pittsburgh Penguins for at least one game. And so let's see, playoff pitcher impact. If Seattle can make the playoffs, they become an incredibly dangerous wild card team. Their pitching staff is legit. They can match up with anyone in a playoff series, especially a wild card series being only 2 games. And it often does come down to the starting pitching depth. They have experience in recent playoff history. And so making the playoffs, that would give the team an emotional boost, the fan base an emotional boost. And they are already in playing inspired baseball. And so sometimes the best story becomes the best team. Thinking of the Arizona Diamondbacks a couple years ago that just went on a heater at the end of the season all the way into the World Series. So both stories, Seattle's surge and deGrom's excellence, remind us of why baseball's postseason is a really special thing to be a part of. Individual narratives, team droughts, personal redemption, all these stories tend to collide in October. Thinking back to things like Paul Molinder, Dave Winfield when they came to Toronto, Ricky Henderson when he came to Toronto. So the Mariners are making the playoffs could be one of those type of feel-good stories in sports. deGrom dominating in October, that would just help to cement his Hall of Fame case, even though that's already there in strong measure. And these are the storylines that make baseball memorable and things that you will never forget about. So, what do all these stories tell us about our modern day sports landscape? Well, there's an overreaction economy. 3 of 4 stories that involve immediate extreme reactions to recent events. Something like the Chiefs losing game week 1, the Chiefs-Eagles game. It's treated like a season-defining moment, even though it takes place in week 2. Something like a Tyler Smith contract that is market-breaking and could change the way contracts are given going forward. Week 1 overreactions, they dominated the narrative. And we tend to live in an instant analysis world where most every event, it must be the most important thing ever. Social media and content demands, they create pressure on not only the players, but on news outlets, the content creators, to come up with immediate hot takes, rather than taking the time to think about it and provide thoughtful analysis. I know for myself, at a recent Blue Jays broadcast, I was listening to both Corey Joseph and Joe Siddall talking about just the nuances of being a catcher in Major League Baseball. And this wasn't hot take stuff. This was their experiences at that level. And that was, to me, some of the most compelling TV or analysis that I'd seen in such a long time. And it was just simply 2 guys with brilliant insights from their experiences and seeing what was going on the field and being able to relate that to the audience. That made it incredible. And it wasn't just a clickbait hot take. So there is room for thoughtful narrative. And so this is the thing. We also have the Tyler Smith thing. Getting back to the NFL and the overreactions. You have guards in the NFL that are making $24 million per year. The salary cap then becomes more interesting. And these contracts, they create a trickle-down effect, because then every other guard in the league is like, well, I'm better than him, let me get paid more. And then it just pushes everything higher and higher. Narrative power, well, the Mariners and deGrom stories remind us that sports are ultimately about human stories, more so than either team or those type of stories. Statistics do matter. Narratives drive engagement. And so, yeah, it's just a beautiful time to be involved in sports. There's a lot of things that just transcend the game, that are more than just wins and losses. And everything in sports these days, it does change so quickly based on the coverage that they receive. And last week's heroes, they can turn into villains the next week, instead of having the patience that we need as sports fans. Power rankings shift, hot takes age poorly within days. And the lesson is here is just enjoy the chaos, while remembering that the longer term trends and the bigger sample sizes matter more than just short-term reactions. The chaos is also what makes sports fun, though. So what's next? Well, tomorrow night, Chiefs-Eagles game will create new storylines and overreactions. Tyler Smith's deal will influence other contracts, and we'll see whether he lives up to it or not. Will Week 2 contradict Week 1 narratives? And the Mariners, will they continue to surge in their push for October baseball? As always, there's inevitable ups and downs in every playoff race. All right, guys, that's your week in sports. Hopefully you enjoyed the content. Comprehensive breakdowns on the hottest stories from week 1, getting you up to date on week 2 in the NFL. We talk some baseball, and it's been another wild week in the world of sports. So let's keep the conversation going. Use hashtag #TrueNorthSportsTalk. To my left here, as I mentioned at the beginning, the Blue Jays are on, and Alejandro Kirk just hit an infield single of all people. All right, guys, so tell us what you think. Remember, use the hashtag #TrueNorthSportsTalk podcast, and we will see you on next week's episode.